What's up, everyone? Welcome to Pat's Chat. I'm Doug Kyed, joined as always by Michael Hurley. Michael, the Patriots
Oh,
have introduced their head coach, Mike Vrabel. You were there. I was
mhm.
there. You decided to put on your journalism fedora with the feather sticking out.
Yep.
Got a little notepad. Put on a
Press in the
three-piece
hat,
suit. Press in the
let
hat.
everyone know.
Um, what'd you think?
Um, Tall. He's tall.
He is tall. Yeah.
Taller than you might think, especially standing next to Robert Kraft. So, if you're worried about the height of the head coach, don't worry about it. It's I mean, we did this all last year, and we're probably gonna do it again. It's human nature to compare him to the last guy.
Right.
Uh, Very different from last year's introductory press conference. Even just from there was commanding the room, which he doesn't have to command us, but there's just even just the standing versus sitting. Last year all of the press conferences were sitting, and it was weird. And so to have a guy like Vrabel come in, there's a lot of command of being able to control what's in front of him, understand the assignment, and just have control of what he's doing. And I think he
Yeah.
knows what he plans on doing in almost all aspects that are required of a head coach. And like I don't we can't sit around and make fun of everyone jaw dropping at Joe Judge's introductory press conference 5 years ago and now do the same. So you can only win so much, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
at a press conference. But when it came to showing that he is fully capable of all of the aspects of the job, I believe he displayed that.
Yeah. I mean, it just boils down to he's a guy who knows what he's doing. He knows what the job is. He knows how to do the job. He knows how he's done the job in the past, and perhaps he knows how he's going to do the job differently in the future, which is a major change from what the Patriots had last year, where we've talked about it before. There was a guy learning on the job, and it felt like in the year that he had the job, he never fully really learned how to do the job. And now that's not an issue that the Patriots have to have. Um, I think that even since his introductory press conference, he like I tried to watch as much as I could because he did like the car wash of speaking on Patriots.com to Tom Curran of NBC Sports Boston. He talked on the both radio stations. He talked to all the news stations one on one. So I tried to watch as much of those as I could, and it seems like he's going to be willing to be like obviously he's an old school guy. He's going to be a disciplinarian. He's going to be a hard nosed head coach. But it also seems like he's willing to take a modern approach to coaching. Even this morning on WEI, they were saying like, "Well, you're known as a guy who likes to run the ball." And he was like, "Well, our best player was the running back. Like, why wouldn't we run the ball?" So I think that in itself does tell me that he's willing to take more of a pass heavy approach, which is probably the way that the Patriots should handle things, especially once they feel fully comfortable about Drake May. Um, but yeah, overall, I think it was a positive, and there wasn't this like crazy big thing that you immediately had to write and get out, but it just felt like a guy who knew what he was doing up there.
I would add, because, well, two things on that. One, he was asked, what did you learn from the last time that you hope to apply this time? And it was that sort of, I guess, what we would call the modern element of connecting with players
Right.
and developing a stronger connection. And not that he didn't, there are players that played for him that absolutely love him, but
Mhm.
maybe extending that out a little more. But then the second part of what you're saying, the best player was a running back, so they ran the ball. He was asked what his offensive philosophy is going to be, and it depends on the players. He's not
Yeah.
gonna, and it reminded me of the Patricia year where you're like, we're gonna run a zone blocking scheme, and they just didn't have the personnel for it,
Yeah.
and it never worked. And it's like Vrabel's not gonna force a square peg in a round hole to imprint his philosophy on the team. It's, well, you have these people, how can we best utilize them? So I do think, I don't know, people are down on the idea of a retread coach.
Mhm.
I mean, a lot of guys are retreads, and
Right.
it's about what you can do from that experience where there are highs and there are lows. Obviously, Robert Kraft, from his brief comments, is focusing on those highs, talking about 2021 and 2019 and sort of, what's the word, eliding 2020 and 2022, because, there was certainly ups and downs, but it seems like he is self-aware, Vrabel that is, to see what didn't go wrong. And I do think a year off helps, a year away from the responsibility. And, he said, what I felt in my soul that I should be coaching.
Mhm.
So it sort of reaffirmed that he wants to be doing this, that he wants to be better at doing this so that he can do it for longer. So it was a good day. I mean, if you really want to come away from that with any negative, you're trying really hard, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like, yeah, everyone criticizes a retread head coach, but like, how many first year head coaches never even get the opportunity, or like first time head coaches never get the opportunity for a second job? So
Yeah.
certainly did something right. It did feel like obviously things went downhill for him in the 2023 season, but it did feel like there were some extenuating circumstances there. Lost a couple offensive coordinators, seemed to kind of lose control of the team. Obviously, the team chose Rand Carthon over Mike Vrabel, and then
Whoops.
how did that work for them? They fired Rand Carthon after 1 year. So possibly not the greatest run organization down there in Nashville either. Not to say that the one up here is perfectly run either, because we just had a year of Gerard Mayo going 4-13, but it does certainly feel like a step now back in the right direction with Mike Vrabel as head coach. And I don't know, like I don't I don't know if you need your head coach to be the most like analytically driven guy. I think that he is going to be trying to do things like that. Um, we'll see who he brings in as his coordinators. We already have questions about who he's going to be bringing in as the OC and DC. We don't really know the answer to that right now. Seems like he doesn't want to rush that decision. Um, Josh McDaniels was one guy that he did say today that he was considering. He said that on the radio. We'll see who else they bring in, but I'm still, I don't know. We've talked about the OC and DC thing, I think already, and where I land on McDaniels is still where that's like right in the middle for me. Like I think there's more exciting candidates, but I also think there's a lot of candidates who I would put below Josh McDaniels. And one of those guys that I would put below would be like like if they decide to bring back Alex Van Pelt or something like that, that would go below McDaniels. I do think that maybe someone like Josh McCown or who knows, Tommy Reese, like maybe they bring a little bit more of a ceiling, maybe a little bit more of an upside, but there's also the downside there of if they're successful, then they'll probably leave after a year or two. And I
I mean,
don't think that you have those same concerns over McDaniels.
Josh McCown was getting head coaching opportunities when he was like an assistant for his kid's high school team. Like
Yes.
he'll be gone as soon as Drake May throws a touchdown in week 1. So that is a risk,
That would be quick.
but it's about, I think, and we've talked about the risk of getting an offensive coordinator who does well and leaves after a year or two. I think, in an ideal world, and Vrabel is not Dan Campbell, we know that, but you build a culture and a roster and a team
Yeah,
where that guy's not in a rush to leave, I guess, is your ideal
true.
scenario.
Right.
As we mentioned that, like Ben Johnson could have gotten a job last year, but he's like, no, I'm coming back. I'm not 100% convinced that he leaves Detroit this offseason. I think he will, but
Yeah.
there's, let's say they either win the Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl and come up short. I don't know. Couldn't you see him kind of saying like, we got to finish this job? So
Yeah.
there's a clear team that Dan Campbell built. I hate the word culture sometimes because it's kind of vague and meaningless, but
Yeah.
there's a very clear Detroit Lions, in the atmosphere. And I think it's going to make someone like Ben Johnson think twice before, leaving for that opportunity. And ideally here, if Rabel has someone like, LaFleur in the mix in
Mhm.
his mind, that could come in, and maybe it isn't. I mean, he's not going to stay forever, but
Right.
if you get 3 good years out of it, and now Drake May is onto his second contract and is sort of able to ascend on his own, it's
Right.
not necessarily a crisis. If you get a guy like, I don't know, like Liam Cohen who does it for a year, or Dave Canales who does it for a year and then is gone, then you're kind of in that constant cycle
Yeah.
of rebooting, which
And
isn't great. So it's
and it's
tough.
important to develop coaches behind an offensive coordinator too. So I think that that's got to be part of the conversation too. If you did bring in a younger guy like McCown and Reese, then it's like, all right, great, you're great. We know you're going to leave in a year or two if things go well. So who are you developing behind you?
Mhm.
Who can you bring in as your quarterbacks coach that then we can rely on to be the offensive coordinator in a year or two? So I think that's got to be part of the conversation as well. I do think that um Vrabel talking about developing relationships with guys is an interesting topic just because he has talked a lot about like the NIL guys who are leaving colleges. Oh, you got your Nashville hat on. Is that
Well,
for Mike
or
Vrabel?
just maybe Jeff Nash. Was he a wrestler?
Kevin Nash?
Kevin Nash. Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe that's what
Steve
it is.
Nash,
I lost a home
Joe
run.
Nash.
I was at the Nashville Sounds minor league baseball game and went to go buy stuff for my family during the game. And while I was gone, a home run by Travis Shaw hit my empty seat.
Wow.
I saw it on the
That's
TV.
unlucky. Jeez.
It's
You
like
ever
the
caught
once in a
a
life.
home run or foul ball?
I dropped a foul ball.
Oh no.
It came. Everyone booed me.
But
Home
that had
runs.
nothing to do with you dropping the foul ball.
That's true. They're like, oh, look at that piece of garbage. No, but I was at I took my niece and nephew to a college bean pot or something game at Fenway. This foul ball went way behind us, but then the wind pushed it. I'm like, oh, that's coming. And it was like a lean and the spin, and it went off my hands and just slammed into a chair. It was bad. But we got the ball, but
Would have been nicer to catch it for sure. But no, I think that it's going to be interesting to see how Vrabel handles that because he is an old school guy. He's an old soul, I would say, despite being, what is he, 49 years old or something like that.
and he's a ball buster. So
He is.
you have to be able, if you want to play on Vrabel's team, you have to be able to handle that. Even with his added emphasis on touchy-feely connections.
Right. So I do think that like the personality aspect in the draft and even in free agency is going to be a major factor of like, all right, are these guys going to be selfless? Are they all about the team? Are they entitled? Because like I actually he said we're going to remove entitlement from the organization. I don't fully know how to take that comment, whether he thinks that it's currently entitled or if they're just going to remove entitlement from the players they bring in. Um, but I do think it's important because I do think there was some selfish guys on the roster last year
Well,
that
let's
you
say
have to
you
figure out
could
what to do with.
pick a receiver. Well, I just blew it. I blew it, Doug. Pick a position group. And where do you start when it comes to the entitlement in the room? I think you start with the receivers, who
Right.
was the worst group in the league. I don't know. Could you make a case for another team? Probably, maybe, but they were below 30th, I would say,
Yeah,
in
for
terms
sure.
of overall receiving talent and production. And you have guys talking about they're going to make people get up out of wheelchairs. You got people saying they have the best hands in the league. You got whatever Keyshawn Boutte has said throughout the year about how good
And
he
that he
is.
needs Baltimore. Yeah.
There's a lot of entitlement in that room, which is sort of par for the course at receiver.
Right.
But
Usually
you're
those guys
good.
are better. Yeah.
Like, okay, AJ Brown, you're reading a book on the sideline. I simply don't care because you are you. Now, if Jalen Polk is doing that, it's a different story. So
That'd be pretty funny if it was. If the Patriots wide receivers were reading books from the sideline.
And I was thinking too, the funniest part, we did a whole podcast with you and Andrew, and I forgot to bring it up. The funniest part of your story, what do you think I'm going to say?
I don't know.
The funniest part of your story was that Javon Baker was surprised that he was punished for being late because he tried to be on time for the curfew. Like, he was efforting to not be late. So why was he punished? And that was just sort of like oh boy, like that's not how it works. Like, that's
Right.
just not. And, the old man in us wants to say that's the young generation, but I just think that's sort of a constant, persistent thing. And just someone that doesn't follow the rules.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's that as necessary. And I thought this is kind of tied into that with whether he's old school, new school. There was no elephant in the room when it came to Bill Belichick's influence.
Yes, I tweeted about that 100%. That was I thought that was big. Yeah.
Because no, he wasn't asked directly necessarily, like, did Bill influence your coaching? But it came up organically, and he was asked a couple times. And the way he sort of described, like, he said it himself, I felt it was important to go elsewhere. And that's, he went to Ohio State. He went to Houston. Now, granted, at Houston, he was working for Bill O'Brien, who probably adopted a lot of Bill Belichick's. But it's also like, was Houston the Patriots? No.
No.
I'm sure there were some principles applied and some principles that are just universally functional. And
I also think
so
that Bill O'Brien wasn't fully trying to do a Bill Belichick impression the way that other past assistants have.
the way that McDaniels and Patricia did, it went down in flames.
And Mangini.
That's true. Oh, can I show you something? Can I interrupt the podcast?
Yeah.
This is a brief. So my friend in New York sent me this today. It is a license plate in the state of New York. And it says, let's see if you can see it.
Jets Pats.
Jets
Wow.
Pats. And now you're thinking, like, is he like a Winnipeg Jets fan? Like, what is this?
Oh.
But no, there's a license plate frame, custom made, where the top part is the New York Jets
Uh-huh.
and the bottom part is the Patriots. So there's
What in
some,
the world?
and it's like, I've been thinking about it all day. Maybe Larry Izzo's kid. Do you think that is a possibility?
Matt Chatham was another Patriots Jets player.
Yeah, but I don't
Curtis Martin, maybe.
see like Chatham. I don't believe feels
Chatham wouldn't
emotionally
do it.
attached to the Jets.
No.
Curtis Martin, I don't feel is emotionally attached to the Patriots. I don't know what that is. It's maybe Al Groh. Do you think that's Al Groh?
Possibly.
Is he alive?
I don't know if
Yes.
David Harris would be emotionally attached enough to the Patriots.
Dude. Al Groh is 80 years old. New Yorker. That could be him. His son's, picking fast guys for the Patriots. So we cracked it. Nice license plate, Mr. Groh.
It must be Al Groh. I think we figured it out. Well, that's very important. What were you saying before you derailed? I forget.
Just about Vrabel addressing the Belichick influence.
Yes.
Because last year it was sort of like, I don't know, Mayo talked about Bill, but probably not as much as someone who played for Bill and learned to coach under Bill and was sort of taken into coaching by Bill could have.
So I actually did some journalism on this. And by journalism, I mean I searched the word Belichick in my email, in my Gmail. And Belichick's name was only mentioned in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Mayo transcripts last year. I think Bill's name was mentioned like 6 times yesterday alone. So I think one big element here, and I'm sure that knowing Vrabel at some point, I think this season he's gonna say like, "Shut the hell up about Bill Belichick. I'm not Bill Belichick. I don't want to talk about him anymore." But as of right now, there's no trepidation from the media to be asking the Patriots head coach about Bill Belichick, which in itself is relieving. It's a relief.
It kind of goes into, though, removing Vrabel and Mayo specifically from the equation, that you never want to be the guy replacing the guy, that you want to be the guy who replaced the guy who replaced the guy, because there's just less, like if this was last year, it would be more awkward than it was. So that's not necessarily
unless Belichick gave it his blessing or something, which
I mean, at last year he would not have, I think we can say, but the fact that the path that Mayo took to getting that, where it was written, and from what we understand behind the scenes, it was not going well. So
Bill Belichick even talked about it on Pat McAfee and said, "Oh, I love Mike. I think he's gonna do a great job." It was like, I think it was the lead to my story about it, but it's like Belichick managed to say more positive things about Vrabel in like his first hour as head coach than he did in Gerard Mayo's full year as head coach. Like Belichick was just straight up not having it all of last year in regard to Mayo and the Patriots. Despite the fact that his son was on staff, he was just not ever going to be effusively positive. And let's say what it was. Like the Patriots weren't giving him reasons to be effusively positive about the team. But I don't know. I mean, Belichick's probably not going to do a lot of media. What?
Bill skipped like week 1 and 2.
True, week 1 he could have been more. Yeah,
he was kind of like, let's
never asked about it.
Let that marinate. But
wonder if his tune changes at all about Drake May now that he's working at UNC and Mike Vrabel's coaching him.
That's a good point. He can't be as, I wouldn't say he ever trashed Drake May, but he was always sort of, well, he's got a long way to go. And it's like, well, yeah, dude, but like, shut up for a minute, like, don't be such a grump. He probably will have to soften that, but he won't be talking about Drake May very much, I don't think.
Should that be the caption, the thumbnail caption? Hurley, quote, "Shut up," and then in parentheses, Bill Belichick.
Yeah, shut up, old man. Go get an Al Groh's SUV with Jets Pats. Speaking of Brian Belichick, and I think we talked about it here, if not in real life, the Taylor Lewan video where he said players, the message to players under Vrabel is like, your butthole's going to be tight every time he walks in the room. There were a lot of assistant coaches there
Yeah.
at Vrabel's introductory press conference. I wonder how tight the butts were in those seats, because I feel as though he was spreading his organizational message, not just for the roster,
Oh,
but
for
for
sure.
everyone, removing entitlement, earning the right to be here every day. I feel as though all of those guys, Vrabel can't build an entire staff from scratch. But I would imagine, based on that, all of those guys will be interviewing for their jobs with Mike Vrabel.
Right. And I didn't see Brian Belichick there. Did you see him there?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I didn't want to convey the wrong message here.
I had a worse seat. You guys were on the right side, and you guys were talking about who you saw. I'm like, I saw nobody because I was in a sea of media. So, but I did not see him specifically. No.
I showed up about an hour and 15 minutes early and still didn't get a front row seat. So that was the situation. But Mike Pellegrino
We
was
did see
there,
Troy
Tyler
Brown.
Hughes was there, Troy Brown was there. I didn't see either of the coordinators. Evan Rothstein was there. And then pretty much like the whole front office was there. But yeah, I guess we might as well start having the front office conversation. I do want to talk to you about the Cowboys head coaching job by the end of
Yes.
this podcast, because I find that fascinating. I haven't talked about it yet. But Eliot Wolf's name, I believe, was mentioned 6 times by Mike Vrabel. Mentioned again on the radio this morning that he was already meeting with him for a couple hours right to start the day before he went on WEI. At the same time, they're bringing in Ryan Cowden to serve a role underneath Eliot Wolf. So feels to me at this point like Eliot Wolf's going to be keeping that job atop the Patriots front office. And that means that probably the rest of the front office will. Vrabel, in his messaging with the media, not in the press conference, but in the interviews afterwards, was expressing a lot of optimism about Eliot Wolf, seems to like him. I think that there is an element early on in a head coach's tenure that he does have to rely on the people currently in the building.
Right.
So, like, I think that you need someone to talk to about, like, who the hell are these guys on the roster? Like, tell me about Del Pettis. Tell me about Layden Robinson.
Yeah.
Tell me about Kayshon Boutte. What's this guy like? How is he as a player? What's he like behind the scenes? What are other people thinking of him? So some of those meetings might be that, but it also does feel like at this point, I don't want to guarantee anything, but it does feel like this front office is going to be given another shot under Mike Vrabel. But the Cowden element is interesting, and at some point potentially could turn awkward, I think.
Yes. And on that, I was going to say we're not a visual medium, but we're YouTubers. We're big YouTube guys. So the transcript, come on, phone, whatever. It's a lot of Vrabel. The opening statement is a lot, right? It's a lot. It's a lot. I'm still scrolling. You get to the first question yesterday.
Yeah.
Just a thought. I think it was from WBZ TV's Dan Roach, who behind the scenes just is like a dirtbag, like worst guy in the world,
Dude on the planet. Just
terrible. Like
I'd say
him and
the
Mike Reese
approval rating overall on the beat would be lowest on him.
and Reese, Roachy and Reese, they're like a gang. They get together and just it's awful.
Yeah, bullies.
Sosi, all these people were so mean to me yesterday as I saw them
Yeah.
for the first time in a while. I'm kidding. They're angels. Anyways, first question, Dan Roach, just a thought on everything that you've said, kind of wrapped in your career as a player here. You said this is a special place. As a coach now, how would you describe what kind of players you want to wear a Patriot uniform to help you win as an organization? MV : first word, Eliot. First word. Eliot. I thought it was the 7th. First word, Eliot. And he might have said Eliot. You can control F that one yourself. He might have said Eliot. Oh, control F yourself. He might have said Eliot a dozen times.
I think it was 6.
It felt intentional to be like Eliot.
Yes.
And whether that's to put on a show or to make a statement, maybe he really likes Eliot Wolf. I don't know. But that stood out where it was like, Eliot is the boss of personnel, and I am Mike Vrabel. Hello, nice to meet you.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, I would say that the perception around the league of Eliot Wolf is far different than the perception of Patriots fans of Eliot Wolf. And I get it. Like, I totally understand Patriots fans want the roster to be better, want the team to be better, yada, yada, yada. I'm sure that this is. I find that on podcasts, I love the comments. I love when people leave comments.
Oh boy.
Um, if they disagree with one thing that you say on a podcast, that's going to be
Mhm.
the comment that they leave of like, "You're a moron. Why'd you say this?" So that's fair. Please tell me I'm a moron for this. But it is so much more difficult to judge a general manager based on one season than it is to judge a head coach. The head coach is making decisions every single day that affect the team. The general manager does it during the offseason and then can really only fill in pieces via waivers, blah, 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 whatever. Last offseason, not great. There were some good things. They drafted Drake May. They traded Matthew Judon for a third round pick. They signed Antonio Gibson and they signed Austin Hooper. They also drafted Joe Milton. Those are probably the 5 most positive things that they did last offseason. Rest of the draft currently does not look great.
The
They
last
didn't
one
spend
really
enough
hurt them.
money in free agency.
The Joe Milton thing actually ended up hurting them quite significantly because he won them a
That
game.
is true. If they didn't draft Joe Milton, they'd probably be picking first overall. So that's actually a great point by you.
Yeah. No, I
But
think what stands out, and I don't disagree, like it's 1
yeah,
year, we never judge a draft after a year. But I think the fact that, you came up short in getting Ridley,
right.
you tried to get
Which might have
Debo.
been a positive in that. I don't know.
I think everyone was of the right mind where it's like, yeah, he's not a number one, but you need
Right.
dudes. And so if they do that this year, they can sort of make up for that. They tried
Right.
to get Debo, came up short. So there was like sort of a Red Sox element of like, well, we tried. What do you want? It's like, well,
Ayuk,
trying.
you mean, not Debo. Yeah.
You know what I meant.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, either way, it wouldn't have worked out based on how their year went. But and then you have the Lad McConkey situation where
Right.
we are not a region that is necessarily college football experts, yet everyone was like, Lad McConkey would be a perfect Patriot. Like, I think more than anyone in the draft last year. I mean, obviously the quarterbacks was that, but beyond past that, I think a lot of people had their eye on McConkey. And if you don't draft him, whatever, but if you're in position to draft him, you trade the pick and then take a guy who was number 2 on his team and then watch McConkey have that year. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna intensify that scrutiny,
100%. Yeah.
and I think rightfully so. And honestly, like we've talked about how if they just finished the last 4 weeks kind of bad instead of
Right.
terrible, if they didn't get smoked in Arizona and blown out by the Chargers, maybe Mayo is still the head coach. That Saturday game against the Chargers was so catastrophic
Yeah.
for Mayo that I was surprised it wasn't also for Wolf, just because
Right.
of how much that broadcast harped on that trade, and now even still what McConkey's done since then.
Yeah.
He was literally the entire offense for the Chargers on Saturday against Houston. Like it was almost as dire as the Patriots offense. It looked like
Right.
everyone
Just having
sucked.
people have
Yeah.
to watch that game. No, it's
No.
true. And I'm 100% willing to eat my word. Like, I'm not even saying that Wolf is the guy, but I just think that it's understandable to give him more than 1 year. I also think, or I know, this is one person's opinion within the organization because I believe it was in the story that Andrew and I wrote. If not, I'm giving you a little bit of a inside look. But there were people who thought that Wolf relied perhaps sometimes too heavily or collaborated too much with a coaching staff on some of his decisions.
Bad news.
And
That was in your story. I'm
it
sorry.
was. And I think that I would even possibly point to some of the re-signings that the Patriots made as being evidence of that, that the coaching staff wanted to make guys happy. They wanted the player-led team. They wanted to bring guys back. They wanted this to be anyone who wanted to stick around was going to be sticking around on a 2-year contract, basically, or whatever it is, 3-year contract, 4-year contract.
They did sign the best offensive lineman on the market,
They
as
did.
Eliot Wolf told you.
And no one else other than Chukwuma Okorafor, who left the team. But
What do you make of his social media post?
So I did some research into this.
He said, for the record, something like, I mean, he got a mean DM, which
He
is
got a mean DM
unfortunate.
saying like, "Hey, you got paid all this money and you showed up for one game." Someone had tweeted, do you know that guy like Wad, WAD, and then some numbers? He's been like a Patriots fan for a long time,
Mhm.
fairly prominent on Twitter. I think he like ran the marathon for Bill Belichick's foundation a few times. The point I'm trying to make is like not a media member. he
Yeah.
tweeted something like Chukwuma for Okorafor, $4 million, played one game. KJ Osborne, $3 million, and then like gave his stats or whatever. So like, and like, it's a fair point. The Patriots got very little out of that, but like Chukwuma for Okorafor did not get paid $4 million last year. He
Right.
got paid a signing bonus and one game check, but none of the rest of that. So I think that might have actually even been his issue to be like, yo, I did not get $4 million. Like I left, but I was also willing to then not make that money essentially. And I'm not defending him by any means, but
Yeah.
that to me was kind of the message they were sending of like, I did not get paid that money despite what you're hearing.
Right. What would you say? Like, you don't know the half of it. So
Right.
we don't know the half of it, but
Maybe we'll find out. We'll see.
ultimately not the biggest deal. But that was another thing that stood out. If we do, this is roster building wise, number 4 pick wise. Vrabel was asked, I forget what the exact question was, but it's basically you have the number 4 pick, you have a ton of cap space. I'm sure Robert Kraft has said the checkbook's open. How do you intend to go about it? And he didn't, say we're doing this at number 4, but all he talked about was protecting the quarterback.
Yeah.
So that stood out to me because in my mind, if Abdul Carter is there at 4 and you have Mike Vrabel as the head coach, it would seem like a good match, a pass rusher that could change. And we talked about, I'm losing track though, because our schedule is all off. We talked about this Sunday, I want to say, like you need a pass rusher the same way you need receivers these days in the
Yeah.
NFL,
I was the one who
right?
made the point that, yeah.
Well, I've
The
adopted it.
Patriots wide receiver situation is actually worse. He's actually better than the pass rush situation.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
it's not as if it'd be like, oh, that's a defensive coach making a defensive pick. It's a need for the team. Even
Right.
like the days of an elite edge rusher being a luxury are over, I want to say.
Yeah.
You need to be able to create that pressure and win games. I mean, I'm just trying to look at the playoff field right now. Like if you look at how the Vikings were beaten last night, it was by pressure.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a reasonable, logical case to be made for them to go Abdul Carter, but to hear Vrabel go protect, that made me think maybe they're going O-line with that first pick because he knows how dire it is there.
Maybe Vrabel's going to play on the edge. You never know. Maybe he's going to fill the need.
He's got to stop doing that, right? Like that was the Athletic story where it was like behind the
He
scenes.
like straps on the pad. Yeah.
It's gonna be nothing like catastrophic. Like he's not gonna like get a head injury, but he's gonna tear an Achilles or like a calf or his knee, and then he's gonna be scooting around and he's gonna be so
Matt
mad.
Patricia style.
He can't
Remember
go
when he
running
was
the
on the
stairs. I do remember when that, but I feel like the physicality of his coaching, if I could have asked the question, I would have been like, when are you going to stop, getting in there with 300-pound 23-year-olds, you psychopath?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, that answer stood out to me. I don't know if it raised your eyebrow or not.
No, it certainly did. And who knows, maybe they'll try to fill that need in free agency, but I've said it probably too many times now at this point. Try to fill the needs in free agency, then just bring in who you can in the draft. Like use the draft to just bring in good players, the guys that you believe in the most, and try to fill all your needs as possible with that $130 million because that money can go a long way. It's the most in the NFL. And I think the Patriots should not be relying on filling needs through the draft because that just feels short-sighted for a team that's now continuing to rebuild and needs to bring in the best players possible.
Do you want the answer?
Yes.
Just to put an actual quote on it. So the question, you got the number 4 pick, a lot of cap space. There's a little bit of a filler, and he says, certainly you look at the teams that are able to protect the quarterback and dictate the flow of the game offensively, making sure that up front we're sound, we're strong, whether that's through free agency or the draft. That's something that's critical. The D linemen, they're getting better every year. They're getting more disruptive. They're getting bigger, more powerful. So as they try to disrupt our quarterback, we have to have some things that counterbalance that. And I think when you hire, and there was some criticisms like, oh, you hired a former player, a defensive player, it's a defensive coach, for the answer to be like not thinking we got to get after the quarterback,
Right.
but we have to protect our quarterback, I think stands out as a guy. And this wasn't just that answer. He has a holistic approach to the game. He is not, he's a defensive, he's technically a defensive head coach, but I don't think he is similar to Belichick, not Belichick, but similar where it's like, I am a coach of the football team. And I think he looks at it that way, and he's going to approach, as much as he has a say, the roster building that way.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, he even said like, in one of his interviews with the press conference, something like that, he was like, kind of, he was like, as a like, I'm thought to be a defensive. Like he kind of like shoot it away that he's a defensive head coach. I think he is more of that kind of CEO style, despite the fact that he was a defensive coordinator, defensive position coach, and played defense in the NFL. I think that he is a guy who can see all aspects. He worked on offense last year with the Browns, which certainly not saying he's going to be our offensive coordinator or anything like that. Breaking news. Browns are promoting Tommy Reese to offensive coordinator
All right, so
for
he's
Tom
out.
Pelissero. So he's out.
He's out.
So if we
Now that's tough.
20 minutes ago something about Tommy Reese, forget that. He's out.
One thing about Tommy Reese, unfortunately, is if the Browns do poorly, Kevin Stefanski will fire him next year and keep his job. So enjoy it while you can.
You gotta pin it on someone else, okay? Even if he's not gonna be calling plays, it's still his fault, right?
That really was breaking. I clicked Twitter when you said that. It's 15 seconds. So you are on the ball.
I get tweet notifications. It popped up on my phone. Had to put
Nice.
it out there right away. Tom Pelissero, Tommy Reese.
All right. So there goes
sticking
one candidate.
with the Browns. So there goes one candidate. Now we're talking potentially McDaniels. Who knows about McCown? Who knows about
Mike
some of
McCarthy?
these other guys? What?
Mike McCarthy, maybe? Think he wants to come call plays? Imagine that.
You could do worse.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
OC Mike McCarthy. I don't think he's going to do that.
OC Mike McCarthy, DC, Robert Saleh. Just get a bunch of head coaches in the building.
Were you as disappointed with Flores in the Vikings last night as I was? I was hoping for a little bit better than that. That was Stafford. Rough. Stafford looked like Brady. He was just picking them apart.
Yeah. What did you think of Stafford's incomplete pass?
Yeah, that was a point of controversy. I mean, it was clearly not a pass, but it was clearly a forward toss, which, like, the reason
toss
that
might even be strong. He dropped the ball with some wrist movement.
Think about when teams run the jet sweep with the little pop. It's so if they fail the handoff, it's an incomplete pass. It was basically that. So it's a manipulation. The fact that a receiver was there is all that saved it from being as bad as it should. But it was.
Was his
technically
up? Was it kind of? It
was
felt
like
it felt a little ridiculous.
It was like, hey, toss me my keys, and it's like, it was like a key toss.
But the ball moved it went like 4 inches.
It was close. It was close to slipping out of the hand, but that's why you draft a quarterback with big old hands. But
that's true. I thought it was a little silly, but
either way, that game was a real piece of crap.
Yeah, it was not good. I was very disappointed.
I actually was having a conversation with someone yesterday. There was, I think, coming out of Super Wildcard Weekend powered by Verizon, there's hope that you're not as far away as it seems. Like the Steelers were a playoff team,
right?
And they sucked. Like there's.
Have you looked at the Patriots schedule next year? Also,
there's some easy ones in there.
So bad.
So I just feel not that they're gonna have a year one turnaround, and who cares if you go 10-7 and suck and then get blown out in the Super Wildcard round powered by Verizon. It's just the first step to getting back to sort of baseline would be that. And I don't know, it doesn't feel that extreme to get on a level with some of the teams that made the playoffs. And this weekend kind of bore that out.
Yeah, I agree. I would also, that reminded me of one of my favorite things that Vrabel said yesterday, which was like, I don't even know if we're good enough to take advantage of bad teams. I don't know if we're even good enough to. So like that did show a level of understanding and self-awareness that like this team's in bad shape. We're going to try to improve it. And our first step is to try to be good enough to beat bad teams. And then he listed his other goals, which was like to win the AFC East, to host home playoff games, and to essentially be like a championship caliber team, which I think are 3 really good goals. I think you could bring them there.
We should have asked him, do you plan on building a winning culture in year one, and see what he said?
Yeah, just to walk it back a few months later. We can talk more about I want to talk about the Cowboys head coaching job, because I wanted to tweet about this, but there's too much going on. It felt a little silly. 2 of the 3 candidates someone listed were Kellen Moore, who the Cowboys like mutually agreed to part with as an offensive coordinator 2 years ago, and Jason Witten, who apparently is a high school head coach who's won 2 straight state championships. But, like, the only thing I could think about with Jason Witten was, like, the last time he was handed a job that he wasn't qualified for, he was a complete disaster on Monday Night Football
Yeah.
and then had to go back to playing football for 2 more seasons. And,
People
like,
forget, like, the people, like, are like, "Oh, Brady sucks so bad. Brady's so bad." It's like, I mean, he's not good, but, like, you forget what sucking at commentary is until you
right.
go back and remember the Witten era.
And, like, maybe he'll wind up being a great head coach. But, like, the literal first thing I thought of was, like, this charisma void that he had on TV as a color commentator, and I was like, "Ah, God, I don't know." That feels wild to be like, he got this job without earning it, and now he's gonna get this job without earning it. And then the Kellen Moore thing was, like, just as wild to me where it's like, so your opinion on Kellen Moore has changed so much in the last 2 years that he went from being someone that you didn't mind was no longer your offense coordinator to now becoming a head coach? Like, I don't know, like, and now there's rumors that they're talking to Deion Sanders. I forgot who the 3rd candidate was that
Bill Belichick.
well, and then obviously the Bill Belichick factor as well, where I know I don't know. Mike
Uh,
Lombardi is trying to make it abundantly clear that Bill Belichick is not leaving UNC,
yeah.
but until it doesn't happen, in the back of my mind, I'm like, this feels like it would make sense.
So the buyout for Belichick before June 1st is $10 million, right? And then after June 1st, it's $1 million.
Yeah,
So if there's a team out there that's not afraid to burn $10 million to get Bill Belichick, it's the Cowboys, especially considering they didn't fire McCarthy. They are not paying any head coach money right now. Like,
right.
there is money in the well to get Bill Belichick if they want him. And let's be honest, we all hope it happens. I don't think
It
there's
would be the most fun. Yeah.
anybody outside of Chapel Hill who wants Bill Belichick to coach the Tar Heels next year. Like, my God, just play it out. Do you want him on Sunday Night Football coaching the Cowboys, or do you want him coaching on Saturday at noon against the NC State Wolfpack? Wolfpack? They do that right? NC State?
Yep.
Yeah. I think we know what we want on that one. So I hope it happens. Kellen Moore was asked about the Cowboys vacancy.
Oh yeah.
I mean, obviously, I spent a lot of time there. I spent 8 years there, so obviously, I have plenty of relationships about that place. But I love it here. I've had so much fun here, and it's been a really fun process and a really special situation right now. Getting a chance to play this Sunday and have a chance to make a run at this thing. That's all you really worry about. Everything else is what it is, and we'll see where it takes me. Hmm.
Hmm.
He was a
Interesting.
very heralded coach when he was running the Cowboys offense. Everyone wouldn't shut up
He
about
was for a while, but then it just kind of like went away, you know?
it. Yeah. Well, maybe he'll win a Super Bowl and
It's
become the
certainly
Cowboys coach.
possible.
It is
Um,
interesting. But do we I guess if you look at the rumored candidates, it's like you want Dion or Bill to coach the Cowboys, if we're being frank.
yeah, and like Deion Sanders was the one where it was like, why is that not part of this conversation? Like that would be the most obvious thing possible is that Deion Sanders would be the guy. But um, I don't know. I mean, I think it's the Belichick UNC thing is going to be fascinating to me. Like I said, this entire tenure, and it does feel like a little bit odd for Lombardi as like the general manager of UNC to be quote tweeting Mike Florio about stories about Bill Belichick leaving. Like, I don't know if you need to do that if you truly don't think he's. I don't know. I don't want to touch it too closely. It just it's weird. It's not something that you're seeing from other general managers at colleges.
You should touch it more closely so that Lombardi quote tweets our post. We can make it a whole clip. Ready? Let's go. Ready? So I heard Bill Belichick is leaving UNC for Dallas. The Cowboys want him. He wants the Cowboys. There's going to be no problem with the buyout. I would expect that before this, maybe this weekend of the Super Bowl, that news will break. Sunday pregame show. They do 10 hours of pregame. Included in that will be Bill Belichick, the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Huge.
Wow, huge. No, no, no. It's okay. But I don't know. I don't know what the Cowboys are doing there. Jason
Can
Witten.
you imagine though? Let's say Belichick leaves, and the reason I think we entertain it more is because he literally did it to the Jets,
Right.
a long time ago, but it's plausible at least. Imagine what like UNC football would. They're like, oh man, oh jeez, oh god, we really screwed that one up, didn't we? That would be
Yeah.
a spectacle. It'd be tough for UNC football, but the fact that no one has ever watched them before would make it easier for them to deal with.
Oh, the third option that was mentioned was John Gruden.
See, I just don't. I think that ship has sailed. I think he's gonna have a nice career doing his barstool
Yeah.
Gruden stuff.
Yeah. It's gonna be a little wild if Pete Carroll gets a head coaching job this cycle and Bill Belichick doesn't. Right?
Yeah. No, I think there's
I guess that boils
something.
down to how much control you want.
Well, I know Carroll's older, but I think he never sort of crashed out like Belichick did in New England, where
That's
things
fair.
went
Yeah.
really, really sideways. Things just kind of got stale and mediocre. But
Yeah.
his whole gimmick of energy and pep, like it could work. I could see it being sold. I don't know where. Like it's not going to work in Chicago, maybe New Orleans. I haven't really
Raiders.
applied much thought. Raiders would be tough. I don't know, but
If it was Tom Brady and Pete Carroll, how weird would that feel?
that would be weird. That would be weird. But I don't know. It's I could see it happening. I personally would maybe find someone who's younger, but maybe I'm an ageist and I'm a bad person. I don't know.
Well, we know that. But yeah, I don't know. It's we shall see how all of this goes. But anything else you gotta say about Mike Vrabel? I feel like we kind of I don't know any bow to put on that. I don't think there's a major bow. I think that fascinated to see how the staff shakes out. Hopefully, there's an offensive coordinator who comes in who either is experienced enough that where he's not going to leave, or is young and exciting enough to provide some excitement. Don't know what they wind up doing with their defensive coordinator hire. Lou Anarumo is out there. Robert Saleh is out there. I think there's some good candidates out there. But yeah, exciting times.
Think they can get Salah?
I think it'll be good. I don't know. I don't know what Vrabel and Saleh's relationship is like. You know,
Salah, I thought was a terrible head coach, but a great defensive coordinator. So if
definitely a
they
great
could,
defensive coordinator. Yeah.
that would be significant. Let's do this, Doug. I got the 2025 opponents for the Patriots. Let's quickly run through.
We're
This
gonna
is a
give them
good
10 wins.
It's a good exercise. January 14th. You know exactly the rosters. You know everything. So home, Atlanta.
I mean, that's a win.
That's a win. Bills, they beat them this year at home. Win. Panthers, win. Browns, win. Dolphins, win. What are we? 4-0? 5-0.
5-0.
That's 5. Giants, 6-0. Jets, 7-0. Raiders, 8-0. Steelers, they're going 9-0 at home next year.
It's unbelievable. 9-0.
Raiders and Steelers, round that out. Now on the road, you always have Buffalo. We'll count that as a loss. Miami is a loss. They always lose there. Jets, we'll just say it's a loss. So you got three road losses there.
Wow.
Ravens,
Not great on the road.
Ravens is a loss.
Loss.
Bengals, they won there this year.
They won there already.
The damage is done, my friend. That's a win. Saints, mark it down.
The Saints are a disaster. Saints
Bucks, I'll go Bucks loss.
Okay.
Titans, that'll be a win. So they're going to go 11-6 next year. You heard it here first on the Pats Chat podcast. Mark it with a B.
Was that 6 losses? I think it was only 5.
Let's see. I had 3 road losses in the division. Oh, yeah.
Plus the Ravens.
Ravens, Bucks.
And Bucks. So that's 5. Yeah. 12-5.
So the math comes out to 12-5, not 11. I have not adapted to the 17-game schedule. So 12-5. Next year we'll be sitting here talking about a divisional round matchup. You know what? I have a take on the NFL playoff format.
Mm-hmm.
They got to get back to 2 byes.
The 7 teams, like why was that? Why did you even do it? It didn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense.
Everything's been incremental. They went to 17 games instead of 18 games.
Yeah.
They went to 7 teams instead of 8 teams. And it's just you're
You mean instead of
screwing.
6, but yeah.
What did I say?
You said instead of 8. It's okay.
No. Like No, like they went to 17 games. They want to get to 18 games in the regular season.
Oh, okay, sure.
They went to a 17 playoff. They want to get to an 18.
Yeah.
It's like everything's incremental. And in the meantime, not that Minnesota, like they had their chance to win in week 18 and lost, and they had their chance to win a game and they lost, where they weren't even really on the road.
Right.
So I don't feel tremendous sympathy for them, but I don't know, the way that it's set up for the entirety pretty much of the Patriots dynastic run is like the best two teams
Yeah.
very much got a nice advantage for a long season of work. And now you have, like, I think, a team that's the second best in the conference deserves that bye. And I don't know if that's just because I watched it happen for so long, but it feels like too much of an advantage for one team to have a bye. And the second team, especially because like it's not like the playoffs shrunk, the playoffs expanded.
Right.
And what happened is you hurt the second seed in the conference, and I think that stinks.
Yeah. No, I don't love it. I just don't like 7 teams. I don't like it being an odd number. It doesn't feel right to me. I don't think it's ever going back to the way that it was, but I do think it was better when it was 6. I think it would even be interesting to look at like the Patriots Super Bowl runs and like, do they win as many as they did without that second bye?
Yeah. And I mean, like the big fight during the Patriots time was home field. It was like, oh, well, you need the 1 seed for home field in the AFC Championship game. It wasn't, are they going to get the bye, which is crazy. But I don't know. In this case, it didn't hurt the Bills, but it might have.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might have.
But it also helped that they could have a bye in week 18 when they lost to the Patriots.
Right. I was going to say it hurt the Patriots because the Bills might have had to win that to secure the number 2 seed and then get the next week off. But instead, there's like a butterfly effect. I
would also say that I don't know if it's because of the current playoff schedule, whatever it was, but like week 18 was almost unwatchable this season.
It was one good game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It like this, even one of the Saturday games like didn't mean anything. Maybe both of them.
The Browns were 20.5-point underdogs to the Ravens. And I actually placed a wager because I'm like, there's no way you can lose by 20.5 points. And if you can imagine this, they in fact did lose by 20.5 points.
It was actually week 17. It was it was a good game. I think it was
after the
Lions or
Chargers.
Vikings were playing in it. And it did not mean a single thing.
Oh, no, it was Sunday night.
Yeah.
And no, sorry. It was a Monday night, I want to say.
Yes.
And it was like, oh, well, it was Philly, Minnesota, maybe?
Yes. And it was like, there was no consequences.
It was like, oh, what if Minnesota loses this? It's like, well, they can still win the number 1 seed next week.
Right. That's just disappointing. And like, I know a lot of times there's nothing you can do, but I'm like, I don't know.
I'm going to double check because I feel like it was either Detroit or Minnesota, and now I'm having doubts.
Might have been Detroit.
I'm going to tell you, week 17, Monday Night Football was Detroit at San Francisco, and Detroit won. But if Detroit lost, because it was a close game at halftime, if Detroit lost, it wouldn't matter. They could still get the number 1 seed the next week because of whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bring back the second bye. That's all.
Yeah. Yep. I'm with you. All right. Rate, review, subscribe, comment, do all those fun things. Definitely subscribe, especially on YouTube, because
we did get a comment from someone suggesting the car belongs to Darrelle Revis.
Could have been.
Again, I don't know how much he likes the Patriots. I think he came here to get something and then left. So it worked out. But
yeah, that is interesting when like you played the best football of your career for many years with one organization and then won a Super Bowl with the other one. You kind of have to split your favoritism there, but
I don't. Well, the funniest Darrelle Revis aspect is, when did he enter the league? Like 08, 07?
07, I think.
And like the best, like the Jets paid an absolute premium for the beginning and the end of his career and missed the prime of his career and just paid through the nose on both ends and missed.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, he got hurt in Tampa, right? Yeah. Because every time I see 24 down there, I see Revis still. But they missed the prime of his career, like the 4 or 5 years in like 28 to 32. And he won a Super Bowl in that era. And then they got him back at the end. And it was funny.
It's rough. Poor Jets. I don't know what they'll do. I don't know who they'll hire. I don't know what they're doing. But All right. Well, that'll do it. We will talk to you guys again soonish when stuff happens, probably with like coordinators or whatever. But we'll talk to you at that point. Goodbye.